unlawful detainer, methods of service, and how much time a tenant has to respond to the eviction lawsuit. This video will provide a brief overview of the methods of service by landlords and how much time a tenant has to respond to an eviction lawsuit. A landlord starts an eviction case by filing required court forms, which include the complaint, Form UD 100, the plaintiff's mandatory cover sheet and supplemental allegations, unlawful detainer, Form UD 101, and the summons, Form SUM 130. Once the required eviction forms are filed with the court, the landlord must have the tenants served with a copy of the filed forms. This is known as service of process. Tenants must be legally informed as to the reasons for the eviction and to provide them with an opportunity to file a response with the court, should they choose to do so. The landlord must have the tenant served by using proper methods of service. Once the tenant is served, they will have a limited amount of time to respond to the lawsuit. How can the filed court forms be served properly? The landlord cannot serve the court forms themselves. Any person who is at least 18 years old and not involved in the case may serve the court forms. Process servers and the sheriff's office can also serve the court forms. The person who serves the tenant will complete the proof of service, Form POS 010, and the landlord must file it to inform the court how and when the tenant was served. How much time does a tenant have to respond once they are properly served with the filed court forms? Tenants must act quickly. Once they are served with the court forms, they have a limited number of days to respond. There are different ways to respond. Most tenants respond by filing an answer, Form UD 105. If the tenant was served in person, they will have 10 court days to respond, not counting Saturdays, Sundays, or court holidays. The day the tenant is served with the summons and complaint does not count. The next day will be day 1. A tenant may have more time to file an answer if the summons and complaint were not given to the tenant, but to someone else at the tenant's home or workplace, and a copy was also mailed to tenant. This process is known as substituted service. Or, if a copy was posted on the tenant's door and a copy was also mailed to the tenant. This is called service by posting. However, the landlord must first obtain court permission before they can serve by posting. If the tenant was served by substituted service or service by posting, the tenant will have 20 days after the server mailed a copy of the forms to file an answer. How to calculate the 20 days? Day 1 is the day after the postmark date. You can determine the mailing date by looking at the postmark date found on the envelope that contained the mailed copy of the forms. For the first 10 of the 20 days, count regular calendar days, every day, including weekends and holidays. The 10th day is the day the tenant is considered served. The tenant will then count 10 court days. For these 10 court days, do not count Saturdays, Sundays, or court holidays. The 10th day is the deadline to file an answer with the court. If a tenant does not timely file a written response with the court, the landlord can seek to evict the tenant. The landlord will be able to obtain a default judgment and a writ of possession. The writ allows the sheriff the power to carry out the eviction. This means the tenant will need to move out by the date stated in the writ of possession, or the tenant can be locked out. For these reasons, it's important to understand the eviction process, how the tenant must be properly served, and the amount of time the tenant is given to file a response with the court. For assistance, contact Self-Help Services. You can find our available services at the following website: